All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Let's begin with beautiful daf out of us today. Today's daf is Lamid Ches 38, and we are picking up in Meretz Hashem on the bottom of Lamid Zayin base 37b. Ashkechinu Shmuel, last two lines, 37b. Our shir this morning is dedicated by Leah Sol in the Zechus of Refuah Shlema for our daughter Ilana Bas Esther. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah, Ilana, together with Kol Chol Yisrael, will have a complete and enduring refuah. So I'll say, so remember again, we are in the riveting sugya of Misukenes, right? And we spoke about the Mishnah that I explained you could shech the Misukenes if you want to, right? You definitely could shech, although Yecheskel seemed to be very proud of the fact that he never ate a behema Misukenes. But technically speaking, it is kosher. But we discussed in the Mishnah what signs of vitality the animal must express in order ultimately to ensure that the Misukenes did not die before Shechita, or I should say even for that matter during Shechita, but instead died as a result of the Shechita. So we'll say with that, the Gemara says as follows, Ashkechinu Shmuel l'talmidei de Rav. So we'll say Shmuel ran into some of the students of Rav. Amrlu, he said to them, My Amar Rav Misukenes, tell me, what has Rav said lately in the sugya of Misukenes? Right? What is Rav saying? What does Rav have to say in the sugya of Misukenes? So Amrullah, they said to him, Haki Amar Rav, this is what Rav said. About top of Lamed Ches, Goa. I will say Goa. I don't know what the good English term for this is. It's like making a noise, but there's probably a better technical term for it. Goa means like not braying because a sheep brays, and not mooing because a cow moos, but some type of noise. Making a noise, right? Goa v'hetila rei, and I both say defecating, ukashka ba'azna, and moving its ear, hare ze pirkus. So we'll say, so Rav, interestingly enough, in addition to all of the items mentioned in the Mishnah, Rav gave some additional examples of pirkus. So we'll say, what are they? So making a noise, when the animal making a noise, right? Defecating and moving its ear. Amr lahu, so Shmuel said to them, it's shrichali la'aba la'azuze oni. Right? Do I need Rav to tell me about the movements of the ear? In other words, did I both say ultimately again? We learned that already. We know that the movement of the ear is pirkus. Sha'ani omer kol she'enu dvarim shamisa osa. So we'll say this is actually very interesting. Shmuel says the examples in the Mishnah of pirkus, Rabbosai, are just examples. Really, what is the definition of pirkus? Pirkus is any time an animal makes a movement that essentially, she'ena shamisa osa, a movement that is a result of death. Look at Rashi just a moment. I'm sorry. Kol she'enu dvarim shamisa osa. Anytime that an animal does something that a dead animal would not do. In other words, both say anytime that an animal goes ahead and does something that is indicative of its vitality, that's pirkus. That's pirkus. Therefore, I will say again, we're not going to go ahead and create an all-encompassing list because there are many different things. Look at Rashi just a moment. Rashi says, Kol she'ena mesa osa, b'shas chotzas nefesh karle mesa, v'habehema dakakoi, de'ilu gasa filu kefufo pashtari pirkus. So we'll say, remember again, so when the animal ultimately is shechted, when the animal is dying, it's called mesa. So essentially what Shmuel says is as follows, Kol she'enu dvarim shamesa osa. Any time that the animal does something that a dead animal would not normally do, that's pirkus. Ma'inin hu dvarim shamesa osa. So we'll say examples that Shmuel brings down. Haisa yada kefufa upashtasa. Right? If it's, let's say, if we'll say yada is the foreleg. Right? If the foreleg was bent and then the animal extended it, that's davar shamesa osa. So we'll say that's something, for example, that's not indicative of vitality, because it's very common for an animal, even that's dead, to have some of this post-mortem movement, and if the leg is bent, for the leg to extend. However, pshuta, the kafefa, but I will say if the leg was extended and then the animal, retracted it, right? Then halacha l'maisa, that's a sign of vitality. That's dvarim she'en hamesa osa. We'll say that would be something that ultimately, again, an animal which was totally dead would not do. We'll say again, remember, what we're trying to see over here in the case of a misukenes is a level of vitality until the point of death as a result of shchita. That's what we're looking for over here. What we are most concerned about with a misukenes is that the animal died prior to the completion of the shechita. So as such, what I need, at least for now, although we'll see this is subject to dispute, what I need is halacha l'maisa, some demonstration of vitality in the aftermath of the shechita. We're gonna fine tune that last statement in just a little bit. So the Gemara says, "My kamash malon." So what is Shmuel coming to teach us? Tanina, we learned this already. Behemadaka. We'll say if you have a small animal, shepashti yadav lo echzira psula. Right. So we'll say if after the animal was shechted, all it did was extend its foreleg, but it didn't bring it back. Psula. So we'll say ultimately again that animal is puzzle. That animal is possible. Why? She'ina elahotza'as nefesh. Because we'll say the act of extending the foreleg, so that is not an act of vitality, but rather, again, that is simply a reflex of death. Ha'hechzira kshera. But we'll say, what do you see? You see from here that l'maisa, again, if the leg was extended and the animal retracted it, that indeed the animal would be kosher. That would be a sufficient sign. So we'll say, so already learned this in the Mishnah. Why does Shmuel have to restate it? Oh, I'll tell you why. Imimas nisin, because if we would have just learned it from the Mishnah, hava amina dafka kaifa upashta v'hadr kaifa. So we'll say, I would have thought the following. According to the Mishnah, I will say the cases where the animal's leg is bent, it extends and bends back. That's vitality. That's vitality. Aval pshuta v'kafafta, I will say if the leg was extended and the animal just merely retracted it, that would not be enough of vitality. Kamashon, that is not the case. Kamashon will say that by a behema daka, even the act of having an extended foreleg and then bringing it back, retracting it, is enough vitality to prove that the animal died as a result of shechita. Beautiful. Meisvei. So we'll say the Gemara is the Kash Rabbi Yossi Omer. Rabbi Yossi Omer. Hi Rabbi Meir Omer. Rabbi Meir used to say as follows: Goa b'shas shchita ein ze pirkus. So Rabbi Meir said, the animal making a sound at the end of shchita, it does not constitute pirkus. That is not pirkus. Rabbi Yossi Omer Mishmo afilu hitila rei v'kishkisha biznava. Ein zepirkus. So we'll say comes along Rabbi Yossi. He said in the name of Rabbi Meir, even defecating and moving its tail is not pirkus. So we'll say, so what's the problem we have? Kasha goa agoa, kasha rei arei. Rabbi Yossi, we have an inherent contradiction. Why? Because what did we say before? We said before the halacha l'maisa, that's what? That the act of making a noise is in fact pirkus, and the act of defecation is pirkus. So which one is it? Is it pirkus? Is it not pirkus? So the Gemara will also listen to this. Goa goa lakasha. We'll say there's no contradiction in the case of the animal making noise. Why? Hadda avikala, hadda amikala. We'll say it all depends on what kind of noise. Look at Rashi, da avikala. We'll say avikala means like literally a thick voice. Rashi says shahayakola ava vichazaka. We'll say the idea over here is it was a deeper voice. So when the animal makes a deeper sound, right, as after the shechita, or we'll see during the shechita, that's a sign of vitality. On the other hand, da'ami kala, Rabbi say means what? That the voice was weak. If the voice was weak, Rashi says da'ami kala, kaya, the voice was weak. If the voice was weak, then halacha l'maisa will say what? That is not a sign of vitality. So sometimes, right? So if it's a deep voice, a deep sound, that's a sign of vitality. That is pirkus. A weak sound, that is not a sign. That is not a sign of vitality. Therefore, not pirkus. What about defecation? Rei arei nami lo kasha. It's also not a kasha. Why not? Kan bishosesses, kan b'misarezes. I will say everything depends ultimately again on how the animal defecates. If it trickles out, then that is not a sign of vitality. If mirases means, Rashi says the merachok, like if it sprays or spurts out, then ultimately again that is a sign of vitality. So everything depends ultimately again on how the waste exits the body of the animal. Good. So now we get into a much more yesodistic machlokes. So up until now, what we have been doing is defining what constitutes pirkus, what doesn't constitute pirkus. And I will say, interestingly enough, it appears out of everything we've said, it's really the statement of Shmuel which seems to really be the guiding light. Which is what? Which is that halacha l'maisa, anything that an animal would not normally do if it's dead is pirkus. anything that an animal does that is some type of demonstration of life vitality is pirkus. So that seems to be the guiding light principle, and all of these things that we're bringing down are all just examples. Okay, so the Gemara will say, now here we go. So let's look at I'm going to chista. Pirkus shal both say. Now here's what's interesting. At what point in time in the shechita process does the animal have to demonstrate these vitality behaviors? When Sebo say, see, understand, we've been assuming that when does it have to demonstrate these vitality behaviors? After the shechita. Let's say there's a little bit of a problem with that, which is what? After the shechita, the animal's dead. The animal's dead. Why would there be an obligation of vitality after the animal is dead? So we'll say, so again, we're going to remember again, we'll say, I'll give you the raya to this. What happens if, remember we saw this before, what happens if after you shech the animal, you take a bite out of its neck? What's the halacha? Right? So leaving aside the blood issue, which is a blood issue, right? At the end of the day, technically, right, it's okay, which tells you that after the shechita is done, the animal's dead. The animal is dead. So we'll say, so now we're going to analyze, okay, when does this pirkos have to take place? I'm going to have chista. Pirkos sha'amru, b'sof shechita. Rav Chisda said the pirkos has to take place at the end of the shechita. My b'sof shechita, both says is great. So what do you mean by the end of shechita? Oh, pe'emtza shechita. Right, the end of shechita means the middle of shechita. Okay, why? Right, in other words, we'll say, so I don't understand. If the end of shechita means the middle of shechita, then why not just say the middle of shechita? To which the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. La'afuke tchilas shechita delo. Because Rabbi say that verbiage is necessary to teach you as follows. Rav Chisda says it has to be at the end of shechita, but end doesn't really mean end. End just means what? It means not the beginning. So if it doesn't mean the end and it doesn't mean the beginning, then what does it mean? Be'emtza shechita. So according to Rav Chisda, this has to go ahead and take place somewhere in the middle of the shechita. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, "Ani shamati b'sof shechita v'meifarsh my sof sheshamati emtza shechitahi v'hai dekar lasof lafuki im betchila shechita pirkasa keva de be'emtza shechita lo pirkasa lo havi lachiyusa." So we'll say this actually is very interesting because what Rav Chisda is saying is like this: the pirkos has to essentially take place during the shechita. During the shechita, because we'll say, if the pirkos takes place during the shechita, then what? Then that shows me that what? That the animal is alive during the shechita. That's what I want to see. I want to see ultimately again that animal is alive during the shechita, because then what that demonstrates me, when the animal is dead, it dies as a result of shechita. Says the Gemara, Amrav Chisda Min Allah. Where do I know this from? This stand behema daka shepashta yada v'lo echzira psula. Because what's remembering? What did the Mishnah say? If a behema daka extended its foreleg, but it did not go ahead and retract it, psula. We'll say that is not a proper sign of pirkus. Seimas. So we'll say, when do I need this extension of the animal's foreleg? Seimas. Ilema b'sof shchita. If you want to say it's the end of shchita, we'll say after the shchita is complete. Kol heichi, seichi v'seizel. We'll say, listen to this. I don't understand. The animal is dead, right? The animal is geshacht, right? It's shechted already. So you're going to tell me now, Bosai, that the obligation of pirkos is after the animal is dead, it has to go ahead and take its bent leg and extend it outwards? I'm sorry, take that back. That the animal has to take its extended leg and retract it, it's dead. The Gemara says, Kol hechi techi v'seizel. How long does the animal, after it's dead, have to demonstrate signs of life? It's counterintuitive, Rabbi Osai, where you're telling me that when an animal is shechted, it's dead. If it's dead, then why does it have to demonstrate signs of life? Elalav be'emtza shchita. Rather, you have to say, says Rav Chisda, that the obligation for pirkos, Rabbi Osai, is not after shchita, but rather when? During shchita itself. But again, a very important point, when can't it be? It can't be at the beginning of shechita. So we'll say, so there is, according to Rav Chisda, how far into shechita? Okay, we'll have to discuss, right? But lamaisa, it's not at the end of shechita, it's not at the beginning of shechita, but the pirkos has to occur sometime during the shechita. Amalei Rava. Rava says no. The olam besof shechita. Rava says no. Pirkos has to happen at the end of shechita. Shani omer, because Rava says, I say, kol she'eno osekein besof shechita. Rava says no. At the end of the day, I believe that pirkos has to happen at the end of shechita, Because if Pirkos doesn't happen at the end of Shechita, then what? Then halacha l'maisa, I am concerned that the animal died as a result of something else other than Shechita. Rashi says over here, Amalei Rava, Yolam Sof Shechita, Dafka, Vika Amrit Kolechi Techi V'seis, La'achar Shechita, Shetishot V'tachzir, Shani Omer Kol Sheina Osekain, Pashta V'chazra, La'achar Shechita B'yadua. So ultimately again, Rava says, listen, this is what you need. Rabbi say, obviously it's not 10 minutes after Shechita, it's mamish right with the conclusion of Shechita, but the Pirkos has to accompany the actual conclusion of the Shechita itself. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, Pirkos Sha'amru Betchila Shechita. Wow. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, no, when does Pirkos happen? About saying the beginning of Shechita. At the beginning. So the Gemara says, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Menamin Allah, from where do I know the Pirkos could now say when he says has to, it goes without saying that it would be okay for Pirkos to happen at the end of Shechita, right? I will say, no one's going to argue with that. He's saying it could even happen at the beginning of Shechita. Remember again, this is a kula. Look at Rashi, betchila Shechita, kolomar, afilu Pirkisa betchila Shechita daya. Even if it does the Pirkos at the beginning of the Shechita, that is enough and it's kosher. That's enough. So the Gemara says, Amar Nachman, so Amar Rav Nachman, Bar Yitzchak Mina Amin Allah. From where do I know that even Pirkos at the beginning of Shechita is enough? Disnan Amar Rav Shimon, Hashochit Balayla Ulamachar Matzak Salim Elayim Dam Kshera. Remember, let's go back to the Mishnah. Rabbi Elazar who said Zinka. Rabbi Elazar said that Pirkos, it's enough if the blood spurts out. Right? It's enough that the blood spurts. So let's remember again. So Rabbi Shimon said that if one shechts at night, and you come back the next morning and you find the ksalim melayim dam, and you find, remember again, we didn't define this yet, but I'm going to give you coming attractions, not the walls of the slaughterhouse, but the walls of the neck. If you find the walls of the neck filled with blood, which indicates, again, we'll discuss this in greater depth, that the blood spurted out at the time of shechita, kshera. Ultimately, again, the animal is kosher. Why? Shezinka, because ultimately, again, it's clear the blood spurted out. Rabbi Eliezer, and I will say this is in accordance with the view of Rabbi Eliezer. Shmuel said, closely based shchita shaninu. We're not talking about the walls of the slaughterhouse, but rather we're talking about the walls of the neck of the animal. So I'll say, so now watch this. So I'll say, if you say that as long as, remember again, zinka, the spurting of the blood in the neck, is Pirkos, according to Rabbi Eliezer. So if you hold that Pirkos at the beginning of Shechita is good enough for Pirkos, then this statement in the Mishnah makes sense. Ella, i'amrit besof Shechita, but we'll say if you say that the Pirkos, in this case the zinka, the spurting of the blood, has to really take place at the end of the Shechita, so we'll say, how is it enough if I show up the next morning and find blood on the walls of the Beis HaShechita? Leichosh, I should be concerned. Dilma betchilas shchita zinka. Ultimately, again, maybe the blood spurted at the beginning of the shchita. So ultimately, again, therefore the shchita should not be good. I'll say the fact that I could do a shchita at night, right? Show up the next morning, and as long as it's clear that blood spurted on the walls of the Beis HaShechita, the shchita is kosher. I'll say, what does that tell me? Says the Gemara. That tells me that zinka, which is a form of pirkos, even if it occurs at the beginning of Shechita, it's kosher. Because we'll say if it had to be at the end of Shechita, there's no way for me to tell if this Shechita was good or not by showing up the next morning. Aisa says the Gemara, V'dilma shiny zinuk, da'adif. I will say maybe zinka, maybe the act of spurting blood is different. Because I will say maybe the spurting of blood shows a different level, a heightened level of vitality. And therefore, again, yes, zinka might be the exception if zinka does occur at the beginning of the shechita. Eina chinami, that's enough. But lav davka, that applies to other forms of pirkos. To which the Gemara says, Umi adif, is that true? Is zinka a stronger form of pirkos? Vatnan, we learned Rabbi Eliezer Omer daya im zinka. So we'll say ultimately again the lashon of the Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer says it's enough if the animal spurts blood. We'll say the lashon of daya sounds like what? Kal midrabe gamliel. So I'm sorry, daya. So we'll say ultimately daya means that it's enough. Enough means that it's a more lenient approach than the previous opinions, which the Gemara says, you're right, kal midrabe gamliel, va'adif midrabanan. We'll say, but it's possible that what? It's possible that halacha l'maisa, it is more lenient than the position of Rabbi Gamliel in the Mishnah, but ultimately what? Remember, because Rabbi Gamliel requires both the movement of the hind leg and the foreleg, but it is more chamer than the shita of the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan said either the hind leg or the foreleg must move. Amar Ravina, Amar li Sama bar chilkoi, akshi ba avua de bar avuvram, v'amar li achua de bar avuvram. So we'll say, so somebody asked this kasha, umid Rabbanan mi adif, is zinka rabosai a heightened form of pirkos, more than the shita of the Rabbanon? V'hatna, we learned, the Chum say, Ache tefarches obiyad oberegel. The Chachamim say, the Rabbi say, it is enough for the animal to do pirkos, either with its foreleg or its hind leg. So the Gemara says, Rabbanon ahiyah kaimu. Rabbi say, who are the Rabbanon commenting on? Ilema ad Rabbi Gamliel. If you want to say that they're commenting on Rabbi Gamliel, kevan shepirkisa mi baile. Ultimately, again, the lashon of their Mishnah should be kevan shepirkisa biyado beregel. As long as it was a pirkos with the hind leg or the foreleg, that would be enough. So the Gemara says, Ela pshita ad Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Eliezer. Rather, it's clear say that they are commenting on Rabbi Eliezer. V'i odif, and if indeed they were more machmir, my ad. Rabbi say, what is the lashon of ad? Ad, Rabbi say, is a lashon ultimately again of being more mekil, not being more chamer. So fine, Rabbi say. So at the end of the day, this is a side discussion, not really relevant for our sugya right now. About in the various shitos of the Mishnah, we know clearly that Rabbi Gamliel is the most machmir, because he holds that pirkos is movement of the hind leg and the foreleg. We know that Rabbi Eliezer holds that zinka, spurting of the blood after shchita, is enough of a pirkos, and we know that there's the position of the Rabbanan, who require either the hind leg or the foreleg. Is Rabbi Eliezer more machmir? Are the Rabbanan more machmir? That's a detail in that we'll circle back to. Rabbi said, but for our purposes, what we have over here is as follows. We so far have three different shitos in when pirkos has to occur. We have Rav Chisda telling us that pirkos is be'emtza shchita, in the middle. We have Rava telling us that pirkos is at the end of shchita, and we have Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak telling us that pirkos can even be at the beginning of shchita. Comes along Rava. Rabbi say last two lines, Lamed Ches and Aleph. Rava says, pirkos sha'amru b'sof shchita. Rabbi say Rava says, pirkos takes place ultimately where? At the end of shchita. At the end of shchita. Amar Rava. So Rava says, Mina min Allah. From where do I know that pirkos could even take place at the end of shchita? This sanya, because of us we learned. Now, by the way, before you turn the page, go back to Rashi. Just last Rashi on the daf for just a moment. Sof shchita, sof mamish. That's Rashi says mamish, sof mamish, mamish the end. Shetefarches bigmar shchita, ditehavi bachios achar shchita. So Rabbi say this is amazing. So Rava is going to be even more explicit. Rabbi says you're going to see when Rabbi say for example, when we said before, like Rava said. The first version of Rava, or I should say differently. We're now further defining. So when Rava says sof shchita, that pirkos happens to sof shchita, sof shchita could be defined in a couple of different ways. Sof shchita could mean with the completion of shchita, or sof shchita could mean what? At the completion of shchita. What's the nafkamina? If it's with the completion of shchita, the animal is still alive. If it's sof shchita, mamish achar shchita, mamish, then what? Then actually what we're requiring is that the animal has the pirkos after it is already halachically dead. So it comes along Rava Amar, so the Gemara says, Rava Amar pirkos shamar b'sof shchita. So that's why Rashi's adding it over here. Sof mamish, shetefarches bigmar shchita, tetehali bachios achar shchita. So literally again, I will say Rava's shita is that the animal must exhibit this pirkos vitality after the shchita is completed. So I'm Rav from where I know this from, this sanya, here we go. Shar Okesev. So let's remember again, the pasuk says, Shar Okes, let me read to you the pasuk in its entirety. Shar Okesev Oes. So let's say if you have an ox, right, a sheep, or a goat, Ki Valed, if it will be born. V'haya Shivas Yom Tachasimo, it will live for 7 days underneath its mother. Umayom Hashmini Vahala, Yeratzel Karbani Shalashem. And from the 8th day and on, ultimately, again, it will be a karban to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right, so let's analyze this. So Gemara breaks up this pasuk. Shar Okesev. Right, what do we learn from Shar Okesev? Prat Likilayim. Also, what this tells me is, for a karban, you cannot go ahead and offer up a crossbreed. Right, an animal that comes from two of these other animals cannot be offered up as a karban. Next, Oes, I will say, furthermore, again, what does it mean, or a goat? Right? Prat l'nidme. Ultimately, again, this comes to, so we'll say, nidme means some type of mutation. If you look at Rashi, Rashi says, Eiz sheyolda mitayish kimosa ubina domen rachel. So we'll say some type of mutated animal. Okay? Ki valet. We'll say ki valet, that will be born. What does that come to exclude? It's actually amazing. Prat liyotse dofen. We'll say, ultimately, again, this refers to a C-section animal. We'll say only an animal born of a natural birth can be offered up as a korban. If the animal is a C-section animal, it cannot be offered up as a korban. Shivas yamim. Furthermore, again, it has to be at least 7 days old. I should say, really, it has to be at least 8 days old, right? Shivas yamim tiyatachas imo. So it has to be 7 days underneath its mother. Prat l'mechusar zman. Ultimately, what does this come to include? That if you offer up an animal less than 7 days old, or really, I should say, less than the requisite age, the korban is invalid. Tachas imo has to be right underneath its mother. What does this refer to? This is amazing. Prat liyasum. You can't offer up an orphaned animal. You can't offer up a yasum animal as a korban. So we'll say, ask the Gemara, Hai yasum heichi dami. We'll say, ultimately, again, what is the case of yasum? What is the case of an orphaned animal? So here we go. Ilema dialarate ime v'hader mesa. So if you want to say that the mother gave birth to the animal, and then the mother died, so we'll say, you're going to tell me that such an animal like that cannot be offered up as a korban, li'olam techi v'sezel. And we'll say, so does the mother have to be alive forever? Right? So I don't understand. But we'll say, so we're trying, what's the case of orphan? See if you're going to tell me that the mother gave birth to the animal and then died. So I don't understand, is there like an obligation for the mother's longevity in order for the child to be offered up as a korban? Ella, so Gemara says, that can't be. That doesn't make sense. Ella demesa v'hadar yelarete. So maybe you'll say it's where what? The mother was pregnant with the baby. The mother died. And the child, the baby animal, was delivered after the death of the animal, after the death of the mother. That can't be why. Because mechiyulad nafka. Because they both say the only way to deliver that baby is how? C-section. I will say that already is possible from mechiyulad, right? We have a different psul for that to teach me that an animal delivered through C-section ultimately is not valid as a korban. Ela pshita, rather, what must it be? Pshita, ze piresh lemisa, v'ze piresh lachayim. Rather, it has to be on both sides that at the moment that the mother is giving birth, the mother dies. So during childbirth, the mother dies. So at the end of the day, again, I will say what's happening over here. What's happening is as the mother is giving birth, the mother dies, and the child is being born. That's the case, by the way, of yasam. Right? That's the case of a disqualification. Now, what do you see from here, Abosai? So first of all, it's just fascinating. But what do you see from here? What you see from here is that in order for the child to be considered to have a living mother, the mother has to be alive for some small amount of time after the birth. So simultaneity in life cycle experiences does not give the child a living mother. If the mother dies during childbirth, so mamish there's that simultaneity in opposite life cycle experiences. Ze pirish l'chaim, ze pirish l'misa. That's not called having a living mother. So what do you see? I amrit bishlama ba'inan chiyus. So we'll say what Rava does with this is something amazing. What Rava says is you see from here, Abosai, that when there is a vitality obligation, the vitality obligation is actually necessary when? Even all the way at the end. All the way at the end. So you see over here that essentially for the mother to go ahead and considered to be alive, we'll say what has to happen? What has to happen? What has to happen? It's not rhetorical, right? What has to happen, right? Ultimately, again, not just a live birth. She has to be alive a moment after the birth, right? A live birth is obvious. You can't have a birth if it's not a live birth, right? So of course she has to be alive. But the idea is for a moment after the birth, Rabosai. For a moment after the birth, that's called having a living mother. So Rabbi says, you see from here, Rabosai, that when there's a need for vitality at the end, that vitality has to extend over. So we'll say, so Rabbi is going to do something amazing. What he's going to do is, he's going to take this into the world of shchita. And he's going to say in a case of misukenes, where there has to be a demonstration of vitality. Where does a demonstration of vitality actually have to occur? It's amazing. When? Actually after the shechita. Actually, for the moment after the shechita. In that moment, when mamish, again, the animal is already parush lemisa, there must be some expression of vitality in order for it to be a miskenes. It's actually incredible. It's actually really incredible. Really incredible. What Shabbos say, you understand what Rav is really saying is, do you know what the hallmark of a successful life is? The hallmark of a successful life is that even when biological death occurs, there is still some chiyus left in you. Even when the body stops, even when misa occurs, there's pirkus. I'll say that's the sign of successful living, right? How do you know if you really lived the life? If when you die, the behemius, right, the guf is still mefarcheses. If there's pirkus, if there's movement even after I die, that's a life well lived. So says the Gemara, I amrit bishlama ba'inan chiyusa b'sof leida. So if you say ultimately again that you need some demonstration of life, of vitality at the end of birth, hainu di'itztrich kra lemiute. Then also that's why I need a pasuk to teach me that ultimately, again, such a situation like this, where the mother dies during childbirth, would not be good. Ultimately, again, if I don't need any kind of vitality at the end of childbirth, then what I need the drasha, michi yulad nafka. Then I can learn that from michi yulad. Michi yulad teaches me that if the animal is born as a C-section, ultimately the animal is invalid. So Rava learns this. If you look at Rashi, it's Rashi a little bit down. Rashi, it's right across from Tosos Psula. So Rashi is lama likra michi yulad nafka dakati have leyotzei dofen el shmamina kol milsa de bo rabbanan chiyusa ba'inan sheichiyus bigmar delay. So we'll say, so this is actually amazing. So Rava learns out from here, from the case of the carbon, that you see that wherever Chazal require vitality, they require vitality at the end of the process. So you require vitality by a misukenes, that is going to be at the end of the shechita process. Amar Rava says, Hilchos Sakya Masnisa. The halacha l'maisa follows the following Mishnah. What's the Mishnah say? Behema daka. Supposed to say behema daka ultimately again is a small animal. Shepashti yad v'lo echzira. If it just extended its foreleg but it didn't retract it, psula. Ultimately, we'll say that's not enough. That is not enough. That is not enough pirkus. Remember, we're going to talk about by misukenes. When is this true? Biyad. This is only with the foreleg. Aval beregel, but also with the hind leg. Bein pashta v'lo kafafa, bein kafafa v'lo pashta kshera. Whether it extended it and didn't retract it, or retracted it and didn't extend it, apparently that's enough movement. Medrash Amurim bedaka. I will say further on. When is all of this said? By behem daka. Aval begasa. But I will say if you're dealing with a larger animal, then what? Bein biyad, bein beregel. Whether it's the hind leg or the foreleg. Bein pashta v'lo kafafa, bein kafafa v'lo pashta. Whether it extended it, didn't retract, retracted it, didn't extend. Kshera. Ultimately, again, it's kasher. So we'll say, interesting enough, by behema gasa, any movement is enough of vitality. It's only by behema daka, smaller animal, that we require a greater level of movement to demonstrate vitality. Vof, we'll say, what if I'm shechting a bird that's a misukenes? What's the halacha there? Afilu lo rifreif ela gapo, even if it only, fluttered, good. Even if it only fluttered its wing, thank you. V'lo kishkesh elas novo, or it just moved its tail a little bit. So harizeh pirkus. Ultimately, again, we'll say that's enough. That's enough. So Mak Kamashna, so what says the Gemara? Okay, we learned all of this. What is it going to teach us? Kulu tanini. We already learned this. So we already learned this in the Mishnah, that a behema daka that extended its foreleg and did not retract it, that's not a sign of vitality, and therefore if that animal was a misukenes, it would be possible. Elo tzas, right? So the Gemara says, yad in regalo. We learn from here that what these halachos only apply to the foreleg, not to the hind leg. To it daka in gasalo. Furthermore, they only apply to behema daka, not to behema gasa. So what are coming to be taught here? Ella itzricha. I'm sorry. The Gemara says, "Of itzricha leidelotan." You're right. I will say when Rava quoted this over here, he was really just quoting this ultimately to teach me what the halacha was by a bird. I had never learned about bird before, and now I learned that halacha lemaisa, when a bird just simply flutters its wings or moves its tail, that is enough ultimately, again, of an expression of vitality. So I'll say, so this ends the sugya of pirkus. Writes the Shulchan Aruch, Hilchos Shchita, Simin Yud Zayin, Seif Aleph. What's the halacha? Here we go. Hashochet esabriya v'lo pirkus harezu misukenes. Harezu mutera, sorry. So I'll say, so first of all, important restatement of fact. The halachos of pirkus are only halacha vis-a-vis what? vis-a-vis an animal which is a misukenes. If you have a regular healthy animal and that animal does not move one bit after its shechita, what's the halacha? Good to go. Good to go. You just say thank you. Thank you for being such a cooperative animal, right? So we'll say at the end of the day, halacha lemaisa, there is no din of pirkos. However, aval misukenes, v'hushol mamidim osa ve'ino medes. So we'll say, listen to this. So, but if you have a misukenes, what's the definition of misukenes? We'll say, watch this. What's the definition of a misukenes? Any animal which what? Cannot stand on its own. Even if it has incredible jaw power, could eat regular food, if it can't stand on its own, it's a misukenes. So what's the halacha? Shachta v'lo pirkas haklal. If you shechted it and it did not move, there was no movement at all. Harezu nevela. Ultimately, again, it's an avela, right? If you shechted a misukenes and no pirkus, it's an avela. However, in pirkasa, but if there was pirkus, harezu muteras. But I will say, fine. When does the pirkus have to occur? But how v'tzarich sheyeh pirkus b'sof hashchita. We'll say we paskin like Rava that the pirkus must occur at the end of the shechita. But if the pirkus occurred at the beginning of the shechita, Eina moil, it does not work. Kate said he had pirkus, and then the Shulchan Aruch goes on to discuss ultimately again what pirkus is. But I will say for our purposes, the definition of a misukenes is an animal which cannot stand on its own. Pirkus, as the Shulchan Aruch goes on to define it, pretty much anything that normally a dead animal would not do. And when does the pirkus have to occur? Besof shchita like Rava. Beautiful. Mishnah. Hashochei lo v'kochavim. We'll say great case. Great case. So let's listen to this. I'm shechting an animal for an akum. It's his animal. It says animal. I'm shechting it for him. And Abba will say, what happens over here? So I'm shechting his animal for him. So Abba will say, now what happens? So I'll say, now what happens if after the shechita he says, you know what? Did a great job. Here, take a leg, right? Take a leg for yourself, right? Take whatever for yourself. So the shaila is, this is now the animal belongs to Ovi Kochavim, but a Jew did the shechita. So what's the status of the shechita? So the Gemara says, Shochid Ovi Kocham shechita so kshera. So we'll say, Tanakama says the shechita is good. Rabbi Eliezer posel. Rabbi Eliezer says, no, the shechita is not good. It's puzzle. I'm Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer says, so we'll say, so what's the logic over here? So as well says, you're going to see ultimately again, Rabbi Eliezer holds that because the animal belongs to the akum, number one, and two, we assume that stam machshavas akum is la akum. That I will say, in general, when an Ovid Kochavim is slaughtering an animal, he has in mind for his idolatry. Therefore, again, the animal has the status of idolatry, and therefore, even though it had a totally good shechita, halacha lemaisa, the Jew cannot partake of it. Rabbi Eliezer posel, Rabbi Eliezer, afilu shachta leecha la Ovid Kochavim. Plus, Rabbi Eliezer says that even if it was shechted for the purpose of the Ovid Kochavim's consumption, mechatzer kaved shala pasula. We'll see what this expression means. Chatzer kaved shala means from its diaphragm and above is going to be pasul. We'll see what that means. Shestam machsheves avodos kochavim la avodos kochavim. Because Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion that halacha lemaisa, when an akum does something, an akum is very frum, and therefore when he does something, he generally has in mind what? His avodah zarah. Therefore, I will say over here, ultimately, again, when I'm shechting it on behalf of the akum, the assumption is the akum has in mind for his, bless you, for his avodah zarah, and therefore, halacha lemaisa, the meat becomes aser. I'm Rabbi Yossi. Kal v'chomer advarim. Rabbi Yossi says, I don't understand it. Rabbi Eliezer, I don't understand your logic. And I think your logic is flawed because I can make a kal v'chomer. What's the kal v'chomer? Huma b'makom shamach shava poseles b'mukdashin, ein hakol holich ela acher ha'oved. So Rabbi Yossi says like this. I will say, in a situation where thought creates reality. I will say, where does thought create reality? In karbanos, right? I will say, remember again, you have a thought to go ahead and eat a carbon out of its prescribed time and out of its prescribed area. What happens? It becomes pigul. It could become nosar, or pigul, right? So I will say, so you see in karbanos, thought matters. But yet, she'ein machshavas, I'm sorry, I will say, in a carbon, who is the only one who has the ability to invalidate the carbon through cognition, through thought? Who? The Kohen. Only the person doing the avodah himself. We'll say, so for example, if I'm bringing a carbon chatas, or I'm bringing a shlamim, and I give it over to the Kohen, I say, you know what I have in mind? I'm going to eat the shlamim in a week from now. I'm going to put this stuff on ice, I'm going to eat it in a week from now. We'll say, what's the status of the carbon? It's fine. So we'll say, by karbanos, where thought does invalidate, It's only the thoughts of the person doing the avoda that invalidates the carbon. So if the Kohen has a wrong mashal, invalidates the carbon. Bechulin, eino din shelo yehei holich ela achar hashochet. So I'll say ultimately again, says Rabbi Yossi, when it comes to Chullin, Rabbi will say all the more so, the only person who could invalidate the shchita through cognition, Rabbi will say, would be who? The shochet himself. Therefore, Rabbi Yossi says in the case where I am shechting ultimately again for the akum, even if the akum has in mind for avodah zarah, bosai, at the end of the day, that thought should not invalidate my ability to eat from the meat. Because Rabbi Yossi's logic is like this. In cases where cognition does make a difference, it's only the thought process ultimately of who? Of the person who's doing the actual offering that makes a difference. Kal v'chomer in Chullin, Rabosai, the cognition or the thought process of the owner should not go ahead and determine the status of that which is being slaughtered. So only the slaughterer should have that power. So we'll say, fundamental machlokes. Essentially, again, we have the Tanakama telling us that if I shecht the animal of an akum, the shechita is good. The shechita is good. Rabbi Eliezer says the shechita is not good, because Rabbi Eliezer clearly says that the akum has the ability to go ahead and what? To go ahead and invalidate the animal through his own cognition. Rabbi Yossi agrees with the Tanakama. Says the Gemara, Hani Tanoi Islu Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yossi, Disanyo. Amr Eliezer Rabbi Yossi, Shamati Shahabailim Mefaglim. Well, Rabbi Eliezer holds that owners of a carbon have the ability to go ahead and what? Have the ability to create pigos. So you see, there is an opinion like this. Rabbi Eliezer holds that owners do have the ability to change the nature or status of the carbon through their own cognition, through their thought. Miu Tanakama Savar Isham Inam Dechashiv in Ilo Lo. So we'll say, even if you know that the Tanakama subscribes to this idea, then an owner can make a carbon pigol. In the case of the Mishnah Tanakama, we'll say the only time that the akum makes this animal into avodah zarah is when Rabbi say, if you hear him explicitly say it. If you don't hear him explicitly say it, there is no need to go ahead and what? There is no need to make this into an offering to an akum. So shaminam dechashev in ilo lo, because stam machsheves laavodas kochavim lo aminan. Because we'll say at the end of the day, we do not assume that the stam machshava ultimately again of an akum is going to be for avodah zara purposes. So we'll stop over here for today. I want to share with you an interesting idea. So we end off again with this really riveting machlokes. Ultimately again about what happens if a Jew does a proper shchita on the animal of an akum. Does that meat kosher or not? Subject to machlokes, and we'll continue with that machlokes tomorrow. So let me share with you a short idea on the parsha. So we know that in this week's Parsha's Va'ira, so we are introduced ultimately again to the Makos. And when it comes to the Makos of us, so what we very often focus on is they are a form of punishment to the Egyptians. And Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch and others explain the Makos were not random, but rather, again, the Makos were by design. The Makos were a Midah Kineged Midah, a reciprocal punishment for the Egyptians. Each Makkah corresponded to some injustice or wrong perpetrated by the Egyptians against the Jews. So I will say, so therefore, again, and what was the involvement of the Jews in the Makos? The truth is nothing, right? We just watched. So Lubavitch Rebbe Zecher Tzadik Livrach in his Likutei Sichos brings down an incredible idea. And he explains that it's not true. He says, although the Makos, yes, were designed as a punishment, ultimately, again, for the Mitzrim, but the Makos also contained lessons that were necessary for the Jews. I'm going to speak about this more in depth tomorrow on Shabbos morning. But the Makos were designed, the Makos were designed ultimately, again, to on one hand punish the Egyptians, right? But on the other hand, convey some profound life lessons to Klal Yisrael. And the Rebbe says something amazing. The Rebbe, I'm going to quote you his lashon. He says, "Ritzon chalatzeis mimitzrayim." Kadosh Baruch Hu was telling the Jews, "Do you want to leave Egypt?" And Abba say, the Svarim write this idea extensively that Mitzrayim, Abba say, doesn't just mean Egypt. Mitzrayim also means what? Mitzraim, right? Mina Mitzar karasika. From the narrow straits. We all have our mitzrayim. We all have our difficult circumstances. And so all of us want to experience, it says, this is why Chazal instituted that we have to remember Yetzias Mitzrayim every single day. Why? because I want to get out of my personal Mitzrayim also, right? I have my own Mitzrayim. So we'll say, so the Rebbe points out, and some of you may hear a little bit of this this intro again as well tomorrow morning, which is that the Rebbe points out that the Makos were designed to punish the Egyptians, but also to teach us how to get out of our own Mitzrayim, how to navigate out of our own difficult or tumultuous circumstances. So we'll say, so each Makkah contains a life lesson. So for this morning, I'll spend a few moments, we'll focus on the Makkah of Dam. So we'll say, so we know that the Makkah of Dam, vis-a-vis the Egyptians, so played a major role. Why? What was the message for Dam for the Egyptians? So the Egyptians worshipped the Nile, right? The Nile was their deity. So we'll say, so the act of turning the Nile, which was the very core of life-sustaining activity for Egypt, into blood, rendering it lifeless, at the end of the day was an incredible theological, a superiority over HaKadosh Baruch Hu, over the Nile, over Paro. What was the message for Klal Yisrael? You're supposed to listen to these words of the Rebbe. This is incredible. He says, Mayim misamlim krirus. So I will say water, and it's interesting, water in Yiddishkeit has many different symbolisms. One of the symbolisms that water has is krirus, coldness. Rogea, heder islavos. I will say, so water, although sometimes water represents chesed, sometimes water represents Torah, water also represents, I will say, the antithesis of hislavos. Because I will say, hislavos is often, right, excitement or zeal is often embodied by fire. Water is that which extinguishes fire. So water very often represents, the Rebbe says, Rogea, a certain even keeledness, I don't know if that's the word, but a certain, just flatlining. Ha'eder hislavos, the absence of zeal, the absence of life excitement. Lu'umas zeh, what's the opposite of that? Zedam is blood. Blood represents what? Husemel hachamimus, hislavos, halahat. I will say blood. What does blood represent? We know, by the way, you mostly understand the incredible part of this? Right? What does blood represent? Blood represents pulsating life, right? Remember again, both say, what's the sign of vitality? We just saw, both say amazing. What about say, what's the greatest sign of life? Spurting out of blood, right? Hot blood everywhere, right? No, it doesn't paint a beautiful image, right? Don't use it for the Shabbos table. But you understand, I will say, the idea being blood represents vitality. Blood represents energy. Blood represents hislavos. So water represents, again, equanimity. Water represents, again, no hislavos. Water represents coldness, and blood represents heat, represents vitality, represents pulsating life. Therefore, says the Rebbe, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was punishing the Egyptians, but he was giving us a message. What's the message? V'zeh hadavar harishon she'omrim liyehudi. I will say the first message, if you want to leave your Egypt and go out to lead a successful life, Ritzoncha latzitz mimitzrayim, you want to get out of your Egypt? Ritzoncha lishtacher me'agvulos hakavalos af nafshecha, do you want to get out of the narrow straits which confine your soul? Berosh uberishona alecha, lapoch es hamayim lidam. I will say the first order of business in life is you have to transform your water into blood. The first order of business of personal geula is transform your water into blood. Replace, Rabbosai, the even-keeled, the coldness with pulsating life of vitality. Go ahead and replace, Rabbosai, sometimes the coldness and flat-lined nature of our Yiddishkeit with a pulsating, exciting, heated up, vital blood. Replace the mayim with dam. Get rid of get rid of life lethargy, and replace it ultimately again with the dam, the lifeblood of existence. But how do you do that, Rabbosai? How do you replace the mayim with dam? So this is amazing. If you look at the pasuk, so the pasuk, this is in Parag Zayin, pasuk Chaf. We'll say, how does Aaron, remember Moshe doesn't bring dam, but how does Aaron bring dam? The pasuk says, Vayach es hayam. Vayach es means Aaron took the staff and he hit the water. Says the Rebbe, what you have to actively do is chase away the water and replace it with dam. How do you chase away the water and replace it with dam? So the Rebbe says one simple phrase, Hider b'mitzvahs. I have to go above and beyond in my Yiddishkeit. See, Rabbosai, we're friends, so we talk openly. Sometimes for us, the metric of successful Judaism is, I'm not going to Gehenna. And I will say, that is an excellent start, don't get me wrong, right? I'm not going to Gehenna, right? So, okay, that guy is going to Gehenna for sure, right? At least I know, and he's probably got like a business class seat in Gehenna, right? At least I know I'm not going to Gehenna. And I'm okay. In other words, as long as I'm not living on the line of wrong, on the wrong side of the line of wrongdoing, I'm okay. And it's true, it's a great start. But that's water Yiddishkeit. That's mayim. If you want dam, if you want vitality, if you want hislavas, Rabbos, it says the Rebbe, it is all about hider b'mitzvahs. It is about beautifying, not just spending more money on your eser, Rabbosai. It's about going above and beyond, and not just checking the boxes, but pushing myself to do more, pushing myself to be more, pushing myself to work harder. Rabbosai, we have so many things on our plate, and sometimes, again, what we're just content in our Yiddishkeit is just getting by. And show up. I show up for shir, right? What time I show up, what I pay attention to. That's the detail. I'm showing up in Rabbosai. I want to be clear. Showing up is an incredible first step. An incredible first step. But that's all it is. It's just a first step. I daven with a minyan, but I don't say most of the words. Again, Rabbosai, incredible first step. Incredible first step. Shabbos morning, I like to sleep a little bit later. I get there before Shlishi. That's not even a first step. Right? That's not even a first step. It's just embarrassing. Just embarrassing. I say so again, but what you see over here is sometimes our greatest challenge is we get stuck at the first step. And I say, hey, at least I'm not going to Gehenna, right? At least I'm water. At least I'm water. And I both say, Nebuch. People spend their entire lives as water. And they never transform into dam. They never transform into blood. They never become something greater. And it says, Rabbi Shmuel Silber, who says, if all you stay is water, you're going to stay in Mitzrayim. I'm sorry. You can't leave Mitzrayim as water. You only leave Mitzrayim when the water transforms into dam. So as the Egyptians ultimately, again, are being stricken theologically, Klal Yisrael is being given lesson number one to become a free, autonomous, and destiny-filled people. Take the water of mediocrity, Rabbosai, and turn it into the blood of hider. Take the water of mediocrity and turn it into the blood of vitality. We should be zocher, Rabbosai. All of us have our own Mitzrayim. And we should be zocher, Mirat Hashem, to be able to emerge from it victorious. But in order to do so, Rabbosai, we have to push ourselves. We cannot be content with step one. We cannot be content with getting by. We have to push ourselves to find hider in every aspect of our lives. Shabbos.